Talking of age, I was aged one evening at about midnight. We have two dogs in our family, Cosmo and Woody. This is a picture of Cosmo because Woody's always running off. And I was aged this one evening because we let them both out for a wee at about midnight. And Woody saw something in the garden and he leapt 3 6-foot-high fences and ended up in Hugh Christie playing field. It was pitch black, it was winter. So Joe and I, we're both up thinking, what do we do? And I said, look, I'll look after the children, I'll protect them here at home. Why don't you climb the 3 fences and see where he is? We didn't know it was 3 fences at that stage. We thought he was just in the next garden. So Jo went with her phone with the light torch on it, and she was gone for ages. In the end, I thought, well, I'm going to have to do something here. I'll phone her, see if she's okay. So I phoned Jo and said, where are you? She said, I'm in Hugh Christie playing field. I found the dog, as we were calling him at that stage, and she managed to bring Woody back. She said when she saw him right across the field, Woody was troubled and anxious. He was worried because he wanted to come home and he'd run away. The context for the passage that we've just watched together is one of anxiety and trouble. Jesus at this stage in the Gospel of John is absolutely popular. He's a superstar. People are following him in their thousands. He is trending on Twitter. He's got more likes than you can handle on Facebook. Snapgram and InstaChat, he's all over that. And people are following him. And then he makes the disciples anxious and troubled because he says to them, oh, by the way, guys, I'm going to be betrayed and murdered. What? No, you can't do that now, Jesus. Everything's going really well. We've got this movement going. You cannot be killed. And it's in that context, with the disciples thinking, well, where is home? What is going on? That Jesus says these words on the screen. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Do you believe in God? Believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I'm going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may know where I am. You know the way to the place where I'm going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you're going, so how can we know the way? Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Is it a bit crass that Jesus says, do not let your hearts be troubled? He's just told them that he's going to be betrayed and murdered. So I think it's fair enough for them to be upset, isn't it? But if we read the original Greek of that word troubled, it literally means this: don't unnecessarily stir the waters. So the waters of your life are already choppy and splashing at the bow of the boat of your life and maybe even coming over into it at times. But don't unnecessarily stir the waters. Don't make them even worse. And the way you do that is to believe in God, Jesus says, and also to believe in me. Why can we trust in Jesus? Because he says, my Father's house has got loads of rooms and I'm going there to prepare one for you. I prefer the King James version of the Bible in this translation. Instead of rooms, it says mansions, that Jesus is going to prepare a mansion for us, a room, a home. Care homes are doing a fantastic job at this time. I really admire what so many people in them, managers, carers, cleaners, cooks, do. But if we're honest, a care home is never quite, and I mean this as gently as I can put it, it's never quite the home that we were in, is it? Growing up, having a family. My granddad had his last few years of his life in a care home. And I don't remember much of them. What I remember, that's me in his arms there in his back garden. I remember going to his garden in Hereford Road in Maidstone. I remember kicking the football and obliterating the roses in the garden. I remember going down to that veggie patch just behind the fence that it seems all World War people had and picking vegetables. I remember having Action Man lines going down where the stairs were, and our Action Men would fling down and hit the wall, and he'd moan at us that we were messing up the paintwork. I remember laying in bed with him and my nan when I was a little boy, and she would go and get us a cup of tea and come up and there'd be a dark chocolate digestive on it, and I would bite it and then I'd tap it as if it was fag ash because they both smoked and I saw what they did, and the crumbs would all go in the bed and they'd moan that I was making a mess of it. I remember the fire in their kitchen and I would put paper in there to keep it heated and going. I remember their larder that was like something out of a C.S. Lewis novel with all of that food in it. I remember the slippers by my granddad's bed that were my nan's that he kept there even after she died all those years. That was his home. That was the place where he loved and laughed, drank whiskey and ate food, played games, watched TV, read books. That was home. And Jesus says to the disciples, I'm going to prepare a room, a home for you. This Jesus who worked with his hands with wood as a carpenter for 30 years with his father Joseph, then says, if I can put it maybe playfully, that he's going to go and build us a home in heaven. What Jesus did on earth before his 3 years of ministry, of building and working with wood, he seems to be doing in heaven as well as he prepares a home for us. Do we believe it? Ingmar Bergman is probably one of my favourite film directors. He's a Swedish film director and he had 5 wives in his life. His favourite one, the one he loved the most, was Ingrid Bergman, pictured here on the screen with him. He was married to her for 25 years. I watched a documentary on BBC 4 many years ago about him, and he said, I had no belief in the afterlife because I had an operation where I was unconscious for 9 hours, and when I woke up I didn't remember any of those 9 hours. So if those 9 hours were taken away from me, how could I believe at all that there was something after we die? We live, we die, that's it, he said. And then he looked out onto that Scandinavian coastline, that rugged coastline, out of his window in the interview, and tears filled his eyes, this intelligent man. And he said, I used to believe that. He said, until my Ingrid died. You see, my Ingrid died, but I still sense that she's with me now. So how can she be with me now if life just finishes when we're dead? There's got to be something more. I loved the boldness of this intellectual film director, that he could change his views, but I was also saddened that he hadn't gone on to grasp what that more could be. And it seems in our passage that Thomas has an Ingmar Bergman moment as well, because when Jesus says, I'll get you there to this home that I'm preparing for you, Thomas says, but how do we know the way to where you're going? We don't know. And Jesus says to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus goes to prepare a home for us, and he does it through that period between the 2 periods of building as a carpenter and a heavenly builder, using wood again, as we've celebrated with communion. He dies on a cross in our place to provide the way for us to go home. The American writer Warren Wiersbe says these words: Christianity is not a creed, an organisation or a religious system. It is the life of God in humans, making us more like Jesus. We don't get to that heavenly home by being well behaved. We don't get there by going to church every Sunday, although that may help. We get there through Jesus. He is the way to our heavenly home. And the thing I love is that when we get there, Jesus will be there. And I think he'd quite like hanging out with us. As a youngster, I used to picture that Jesus would be on this throne and he'd never come down from it. Now, I know that we'll be worshipping him for all eternity, but worship is far wider than just singing songs. It's giving worth to something or someone. And maybe Jesus would come past your home, your room, my room, mansion, and hang out with us because he likes us. He likes you. You, the black sheep of the family, do you remember from a few weeks ago? He doesn't just love you, Jesus also likes you and me as well. I wonder if that's the reason why, and I've got no theological support for this at all. There's no Bible proof text. But I wonder if that's the reason our hearing is the last thing to go as we're dying. You know, you've been into a hospital room, haven't you? And the person on the bed looks, for all intents and purposes, as if they're gone already. And the nurse or doctor will say to you, remember they can still hear every word you're saying. Could it be that our hearing stays because up until that final moment when we breathe our last, Jesus is calling us home. And Jesus is saying, take my scar-stained hand and I'll take you to the place that I prepared you for. Come with me and you'll be home and you'll be safe. There's a lady at my last church, about a decade older than me, and she shared with me the worst life story I've ever heard face to face. Her life story was horrific. And she was at this stage in an abusive marriage with a Christian husband. He was well respected at his church. She was searching for Jesus, but not sure because of her past life and what had been done to her and the decision she'd made that God would accept her. And I encouraged her that God would. And she did put her hand into the hand of Jesus, as it were, and she did become a follower of him. And after that moment, I said to her, we call her Jo, that's my wife's name, so I remember it. I said, Jo, what do you want from life now? She said, I'd love a dressing gown. Pardon? I'd love a dressing gown, she said. You can have anything, dream anything, why a dressing gown? She said, well, when I'm at home in the evening, I always sit fully clothed and I have a bag with my basic essentials in it next to the couch. Because I know that my husband will become abusive, possibly in subtle ways. He comes in and while I'm watching the television, he turns over the channel or turns down the volume and then walks out. He's got no intention of watching what's on the screen, but he wants to let me know that he's in control and he's in charge. And she said, I can't cope living like that. And so I'm always ready to run. She said, if I have a dressing gown and I can wear that in the evening, watching the TV, I know that I'm completely safe. That my home is a safe place to be. She divorced that man and is remarried to a Christian chap, and she has a dressing gown. And she knows that Jesus has prepared a place for her. He will come back at the end of her life, if not before, to take her to be where he is also, in a home that he has prepared for her. Friends, Jesus is the way home. No one gets to the Father except through him. I am the way, the truth and the life, Jesus says. Let's pray together. Jesus, thank you that you prepare a home for us, a place of safety, a place in eternity where we are welcomed and part of a community where we don't feel loneliness, but there is space, where we can be creative and use all of the talents that you've given us as we worship you. Help us to believe that you have provided a way